We go Biology B students, lesson 3.1, history of classification. So classification is very important in biology for a lot of different reasons, but if you can just simply think about what your closet looks like right now, or your drawers, you have certain things that you put in certain places based upon certain characteristics. So if your closet, you might have the pants, not only pants, but you might have dark pants and light pants, or jeans and khakis and that type of thing. And your shirts can be long sleeve, short sleeve, blouses, polos, that type of deal, various colors, stripes versus solids. So based upon the characteristics of the creatures that we'll be looking at and analyzing, we have classified those things into certain regions, and we've used the Latin language, because it's dead, it doesn't change anymore, so like English changes still, to identify and name these things so that it doesn't change over the course of history. So with that being said, the essential questions for the lesson: what do classification systems show? How are classification systems developed? How is technology used in classification systems, and how are classification systems useful? All right, when you are done, you should be able to describe the history and explain the purpose and methods of modern biological classification. Recognize the classification systems change with identification of new evidence, for example, morphological or structural change, and small units or subunits like RNA, what kind of changes happen there. Describe the organization of taxa or groups in a biological classification system. And so basically, much like your closet where you have pants in one section, shirts in another section, maybe sweaters in another section, we have a classification system where we group things into big names like domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Or you can make up your own little rhyme for that. So the old one was, when it was just the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, was King Philip came over from Greece. Silly. So, question: with about 1 million types of animals and 300,000 types of plants on Earth, how would you begin to classify them or put them into groups based upon shared characteristics? Classification: the action or process of classifying something according to shared qualities or characteristics. The classification of disease according to symptoms, classification of clothes in your closet. If you look at the picture here, you can see how we classified these various objects. Classification systems are frameworks developed by scientists for describing the diversity of organisms, indicating the degree of relatedness between organisms. Technology has allowed scientists to continually expand upon the current framework and update or change the system to further classify organisms. DNA, the electron microscope, ribosomal RNA, all of these things have helped really get more specific details into classification. The framework has changed over the years. When I was a student back in the day, we only had the two kingdom system, and then they changed that to a 5 kingdom system where we included single cell creatures, fungi like mushrooms, and plants and animals, and bacteria was the monarans. They changed the monarans into a couple different phyla or groups: the true bacteria and the old bacteria, the archaeobacteria, and then the protists, fungi, plantae, and animalia. And then there's a 3-domain system: the bacteria, the archaea, which is your ancient bacteria, and then the true cells, the eukarya. So this happens, all this stuff started happening a long time ago. We started to divide these things up into groups. So Aristotle divided into 2 groups, plants and animals, and then they divided the animals into blood and bloodless. Also divided animals into 3 groups according to how they moved. Did they walk, fly, or swim? And which all makes sense back in the day when you didn't have some more detail with the use of technology. Linnaeus was pretty much the father of classification. Classified plants and animals according to similarities in form. Divided living things into one of 2 kingdoms, plants and animal. Divided each of the kingdoms into smaller groups called genera, which is a general. Um, then they finally divided each of the genera into a very specific name called a species. So, for example, we are Homo sapiens. There are no other sapiens. Homo being the genus name, it's capitalized. Species being or sapiens being the species name, not capitalized. So Linnaeus designed a system of naming organisms called binomial, two names, nomenclature, system of naming, which gave each organism two names, genus and the species. The genus and species names would be similar to your first and last names. Genus is always capitalized, species is never capitalized. To be written correctly, the scientific name must be either underlined or written in italics. Okay, so here's his groups. So for example, if you wanted to identify humans through the classification system designed by Linnaeus, our kingdom is the animal. The further divided into ones with backbones or not with backbones, and that's chordata. So since we do have a backbone, our phylum is chordata. We further divide the backboned individuals into a class of animals. And so we are in the class Mammalia because we have hair and take care of our young, and the females have mammary glands and so forth. We further divide the mammals into primates, so that's our order. The primates are further divided into a family of primates called the Hominidae. And then finally, the genus is Homo and the species is Sapien. So that's our full scientific name. When written, normally we just write the genus and species name. So based on Carolus Linnaeus's binomial nomenclature system, each organism is given a two-part name. An organism may have more than one common name, but only one particular scientific name. So if you look at the picture there, that thing is named lots of different things. It's a mountain lion, it's a cougar, it's a puma. The name you decide to use probably depends on where you live. However, its scientific name is there's only one name, Felis concolor. Robert Whitaker, 1969, American plant ecologist, added three kingdoms: fungi, protists, and monarians. So we had the animals and the plants, and he included the mushrooms, fungi, the protists, single-celled creatures, and true cells, and then the monarians, which are your bacteria. Classified organisms whether or not they possessed a true nucleus, and monarians are prokaryotes and no nucleus. Single-celled eukaryotes were put in the kingdom Protista. We had some issues back in the day where we had something like a euglena. When you only had two kingdoms, you had a euglena that swam around, but also underwent photosynthesis. And so was it a plant or was it an animal? And it was a little more complicated. Now we can put that into a single-cell creature, the protists. Three multicellular eukaryotic kingdoms distinguish themselves by the general manner in which they acquire food. So plants are autotrophs, meaning they make their own nutrients, self-nutrient makers, and use photosynthetic systems to capture the energy from the sun to build organic molecules like glucose. Animals are heterotrophs and acquire nutrients by ingesting plants or animals and then digesting those to get the energy from them. We can't go lay down in a suntanning bed and feel like we are full. We don't have that capability like a plant does. Fungi are also heterotrophs, but unlike animals, they generally break down large organic molecules in the environment. They're decomposers. Unicellular organisms use a variety of modes of nutrition. In the 1990s, we see that Carl Weiss overturned one of the major dogmas of biology. Until that time, biologists had taken for granted that all life on Earth belonged to one of two primary pathways: true cells, which include animals, plants, fungi, certain unicellular organisms such as paramecium, and prokaryotes, all remaining microscopic organisms. What was discovered? That there are actually three primary lineages within that. What that had previously been called prokaryotes, there are two distinct groups of organisms, no more related to one another than were to eukaryotes. Because of his work, it is now widely agreed that there are three primary divisions of living system: eukarya, true cells; bacteria, cells without the nucleus and without membrane-bound organelles, and the archaea, a classification scheme proposed in 1990. Archaea are related to us, to the eukaryotes. They are descendants of the microbes that gave rise to the eukaryotic cell billions of years ago. Archaea was initially thought to exist only in extreme environments, hot, cold, and salty. Actually are a large and diverse group of organisms that are widely distributed in nature, soils, and oceans as well. As such, they are significant contributors to global carbon and nitrogen cycles. These are what are known as the extremophiles, so they can live in hostile environments as well as the ocean and soils. So our modern system has 6 kingdoms, 3 domains. The kingdoms are broad, and as you go down the system, they get more specific. Kingdoms are further divided into groups, phylums, and then the smaller and smaller groups. How do you classify a dog? You got to ask questions. Is it a true cell? Does it have chloroplast? Right, so it's an animal because it doesn't chloroplast. You recognize it in the animal kingdom. What phylum? Does it have a backbone or not a backbone? So these are all going to be questions where you kind of say, is it this or that? What we call a dichotomous key. You can ask questions and divide it up into either you want this group or that group, group A or group B, right? Plant or animal, that type of thing. So if you look at the picture here, the dog versus the wolf, you can see they're similar in the sense that they are animals, they have backbones, they are in the order Carnivora, right? They both have the same family, but it's not until they get to the species that they're different. So they both belong to the genus Canis, but they're very different species. Using Aristotle's 3-group system based on movement, name 2 animals that would fit each of the 3 groups. Discuss whether Aristotle's 3-group system had any built-in problems. Explain any problems that you would see. If you look at, for example, whether that wolf would be basically the same species, but now that we go further and further down, we can divide it up into different species. And that ends lesson 3.1.